Hi friends, welcome to our annual Marshall University Seminary Day. For our students, we have representatives from 10 different seminaries and divinity schools around the Southeast and further. And so they are all here today, and we are going to start out by getting an introduction from our representatives and admissions counselors from those different seminaries and divinity schools and schools of theology. And we're going to start out with Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. Their representative, unfortunately, was unable to be with us today. And so I'm going to share my screen and pray and hope that the video works and the sound works. So here's Southeastern Baptist Theological. All right, so I recognize you may not have been able to hear the sound of that video, but I will post a link with this video on YouTube so you have a chance to hear all of the words and not just see the video. So with that being said, Daniel from Iliff School of Theology, would you mind giving us a introduction to Iliff?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my name is Brother Daniel, and I'm one of the admissions representatives at Iliff School of Theology. So we're located in Denver, Colorado, and we were established in 1892 with historic roots in the Methodist Church and a connection to the University of Denver. I think it's also fair to say we're probably one of the most progressive and religiously diverse of the ATS accredited seminaries in North America. Our students come from about 30 different faith traditions, including non-Christian. So we have a lot of Methodists, obviously, but all the mainline denominations are represented, Episcopal, American Baptist, etc., Lutheran. But we also have a lot of non-denominational students, Unitarian Universalists, and we always have some Buddhist, Jewish, Catholic students as well. So it makes for a very lively classroom discussion and experience. Our faculty are equally diverse. About a third are women and scholars of color, and they include folks like Miguel de la Torre, who some American Baptist students may know. He's probably one of the foremost Christian ethicists in the United States, particularly in areas of Christian theology and immigration. And then I'd also highlight Pam Eisenbaum, who's one of only 4 Jewish women professors in the United States at a Christian seminary who teaches actually in Pauline New Testament studies. We also have an Eco-Justice Institute and a really new funky thing, a Theology and Artificial Intelligence Institute at Iliff that's doing some really interesting work around computer applications to weed out bias. So a lot of neat stuff going on. You can do any of our degrees in an online or hybrid format, so you don't have to move to Denver, Colorado to do any of our degrees. There's worse places to live, but Denver's probably a little bit more expensive than North Carolina and other places. So we offer 4 master's degrees: the Master of Divinity, Master of Theological Studies, Master of Arts in Pastoral and Spiritual Care, and a Master of Arts in Social Justice and Ethics. And we have a plethora of concentrations that you can do as well in the MDiv and MTS degrees. And then if you wish to go on, we have a Doctor of Ministry and a joint PhD in religion with the University of Denver. And that's probably around 2 minutes. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Any chance you all are going to have a DMin with a concentration in social justice?
So our DMin is really broad, but our DMin is actually titled a Doctor of Ministry and Prophetic Leadership. So no surprise to folks at Iliff, but that's what it is. We are actively recruiting for our winter January term, so we welcome applications.
All right. All right, so I'm going to ask if Abby Sizemore from Baptist Seminary of Kentucky can give an introduction now.
Yes. Hi, my name is Abby Sizemore. I'm the Director of Admissions at the Baptist Seminary of Kentucky. And we are located, obviously, in Kentucky. We're located in both Louisville, Kentucky and in Georgetown, Kentucky. But we are also fully online as well, so you're able to take classes from wherever you are. And so we offer online classes through Zoom like this. And so the way we're able to do that is offering still face-to-face classes for students to attend to get the kind of one-on-one face-to-face conversation in classes at the same time with their faculty members on Zoom. But that way you're able to do it from where you are. We offer a Master of Divinity degree. If you hear a dog, sorry, scratching on the door outside, because her work from home perk, she's like, let me in, let me in. Anyways, that's what that noise is. But we offer a Master of Divinity degree. And then we also offer 2 different certificates. We offer a certificate in pastoral care and a certificate in rural ministry. And then recently we've been offering what we call Flourish workshops through our Flourish Center. And these are for lay leaders and people in the church who might not be looking for a full degree or a full certificate, but might be looking to do things like Youth Ministry 1 for your youth volunteers, things like Intro to the Bible for your Sunday school teachers, things like that you might be interested in for your church members as well. At BSK, we're really focused on being a seminary for the church as well as for those who are looking to be, ministers in the church and otherwise. We have several areas of emphasis that we like to highlight. We have an emphasis in racial justice. Our campus in Louisville is on the campus of Simmons College of Kentucky, which is a historically Black college. And then we also, as a part of our curriculum, it's required for all students, require a course in womanist theology. So we have that as a very high priority in our curriculum, as well as women in ministry. We have a pastoral care concentration and a rural ministry concentration. Being in Kentucky, we have a lot of students and faculty members who are part of rural churches, who are pastors at rural churches. And so we have this rural ministry program in which we have the concentration and the certificate so that students who feel called to those rural churches as their permanent placement rather than as a stepping stone into a larger church can find training and experience there through the rural ministry program. Our application and more information can be found at our website, which is just bsk.edu. It's very simple, and you can do all of that online as well. So it was great to be with all of you.
Thanks, Abby. I appreciate it. All right, Carissa, would you mind giving us an intro to Gardner-Webb?
Sure. Thank you very much. And I realize I should have revised my title a little bit so that you can see Gardner-Webb School of Divinity. That's what happens when you leave a meeting and go to one. I'm sorry. The School of Divinity at Gardner-Webb is located in the sprawling metropolis of Boiling Springs, North Carolina. For folks who may not be familiar with the area, we are in what I like to lovingly refer to as our version of the triangle. It would be, we are located in a triangular region that would encompass Charlotte, Asheville, and then, of course, upstate South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg area. So that's our version of the triangle out here. We are, to put it in context, about an hour from Charlotte, and there is a Gardner-Webb University satellite campus in Charlotte, and our School of Divinity does offer a few classes on that campus as well. Our School of Divinity offers the Master of Divinity degree with a plethora of concentrations ranging from biblical studies all the way to pastoral studies. Our most popular concentration would be pastoral care and counseling. Second most popular concentration for us would be Christian education and formation, followed by pastoral studies. Additional concentrations include missiology and intercultural studies as well. Because of our relationship with Gardner-Webb University, we have an opportunity to provide dual degree options for students who may be interested in earning the Master of Divinity plus an additional degree. Those would be Divinity in Mental Health Counseling, Divinity in Business, Divinity in Religion, and Divinity in English. In our Divinity School, we do offer face-to-face or in-person classes. We have also incorporated into our delivery system hybrid courses that may be offered with the face-to-face experience being via Zoom only, or limited experiences in the classroom, either in Charlotte or here in Boiling Springs, and we do offer some courses online as well. We also offer a Doctor of Ministry program with a Doctor of Ministry in Christian Ministries and a Doctor of Ministry in Pastoral Care and Counseling. Our university, very much like our sister school, Campbell Divinity School, we would be an historically Baptist divinity school in a historically Baptist university setting. Within our School of Divinity, however, you will find a variety of different Christian denominations represented, and you will also find almost half and half men and women enrolled, and the fastest growing group of students in our Divinity School would be our African American women. So that's a little bit about Gardner-Webb School of Divinity.
Thanks, Carissa. Appreciate that.
Well,
Because you mentioned Campbell, I'm going to ask that my friend Amber Johnson go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Johnson Carter. I am the Director of Admissions at Campbell University Divinity School, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation today. Campbell University has been my home since 2006, which the reality that it is now 2020 makes me feel extremely old. But I started at Campbell University as an undergrad student, a religion major, and when I finished in 2010, I went into our MDiv program at Campbell Divinity, and I'm a graduate of that. So I certainly can relate to the experience of maybe many Mars Hill students who are attending a smaller undergraduate school where it's been like family, but now they're looking for a graduate school or a graduate program and figuring out the next step. But they want to find a place that has like a strong sense of community and a space that would give them the opportunity to develop as a person and in their faith. So I feel like I can certainly connect on that level. Campbell University is located in Buies Creek. I, like Boiling Springs, do not expect you to know where Buies Creek is. It is about 30 miles south of Raleigh. I like to say we're in the heart of North Carolina. We are halfway. You can get to the mountains and you can get to the beach. So for all of you that live in the mountains for 4 years, if you want to get closer to the beach, Campbell is a great option. But we're a private university, a smaller one that has a very similar feel to Mars Hill. Our Divinity School is in its 25th year, and we offer traditional graduate programs like the Master of Divinity, Master of Arts in Christian Ministry, with a lot of dual degree options like mental health counseling and law and business. But we actually have a brand new program, which I think fits really well with the theme of vocation here that we're going to talk about today. Our new MA in Faith and Leadership Formation degree program has been provided. We were offering it to people so that people who are called to other vocations outside of vocational ministry can have some theological education foundation from which they can more fully live out their faith in whatever vocation it is that they're called to. So I'm really excited about that program. I think it would even be a great fit for our conversation today. Our programs in our community are really built on our holistic approach and our mission to be Christ-centered, Bible-based, and ministry-focused. So we really want people to be challenged academically, but we want you to grow spiritually, and we really want you to know how to apply what it is that you're learning. So all three of those pieces are really important to us. And a big unique piece for us is our family-oriented community. Students, faculty, and staff all make this journey together. It's a transformational journey, and we don't want you to make it alone. We're all part of it. And we do everything we can to make the journey possible for students and individuals. So even financially possible, we give up to an average of 60% of scholarship assistance to students to help cover tuition and fees. So, you know, whether you're considering vocational ministry or if you're still discerning what it is that God may be calling you to do, I would really love to talk with you further. We have programs to fit those two things and everything that is in between. So as an advisor to undergrad students, about over 300 undergrad students before I had this position, conversations about discernment and vocational call was a big part of our conversations, and they're very important things to do. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and thank Andrew for facilitating that so that these very important things can be discussed.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. I'll go ahead and disclose that I'm a Campbell undergrad and a grad school graduate from Divinity School at Campbell. So Marshall students who want to talk about Campbell, by all means, you can come to me if you're too scared to talk to Amber, but Amber won't bite.
Andrew and I went through undergrad and grad school together, so
Yes.
I survived it. So I feel like I should have gotten some extra credit for that.
Right, yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Amber. All right, Megan from McAfee School of Theology.
Hi, I'm Megan. I am with McAfee School of Theology at Mercer University in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a Mars Hill alum, class of 2016. I had to think about that, sorry.
It's been a long time.
It feels like a long time. So I'm excited to be here representing McAfee. We have a lot to offer at McAfee, and our mission is to prepare ministers who will inspire the church and the world to imagine, discover, and create God's future. One of my favorite things about McAfee is that we are very diverse in our student body, racially, denominationally. We have a huge variety of every denomination and every kind of person you can think of, and it is a beautiful community. And so for me, as someone who went to Mars Hill and graduated from there, and most days wish I was able to drive there just to look at the mountains, I chose McAfee after having been to Mars Hill because the community was so similar, and because I found a place in Atlanta that reminded me so much of what I had at Mars Hill. And community is what matters most to me, and so that's what drew me here. But we also have amazing programs, including our Master of Divinity program that has embedded certificates that you can get in Christian ethics, community transformation, congregational ministry, interfaith dialogue, and spiritual care. We also have a Master's of Arts in Christian Ministry, a Master of Theological Studies, and a graduate certificate in theological studies. And those are just the master's options, but I'd love to talk with you more. We also have some combined degree options with business, clinical mental health counseling, and organizational leadership. So if you're interested, I'm certainly here to talk more. And I know that every seminary here wants you to choose the best place for you personally. And so we hope that you will seek out these conversations so that you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Megan.
So since Andrew confessed his bias,
Yes.
I will confess mine as well. I sit on the board of visitors for McAfee School of Theology. I'm also an alum of Candler Div School. So students here at Mars Hill who want to talk about either of those schools, I do have a slightly closer connection. But yes, as Megan said, the goal is to make sure that everybody ends up in the school that is the best fit for them. So
Absolutely. All right, great. Well, since McAfee is in Atlanta, we want to move to your guys' sister school over at Candler. So if Samuel and Ben would like to give an introduction to Candler.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you, Stephanie. I'm Sam Martinez. I'm the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. And look, I could talk to you about Atlanta. I think Megan did a great job. Atlanta's the most religiously vibrant city I know in North America. We could talk about Emory, the top 25 school in the country, a Research One institution. We could talk about our student diversity or our great scholarship program, but I'm going to let you hear what makes Candler special firsthand from one of my favorite people at Candler, a third-year MDiv student and a Candler ambassador, Ben Fletcher. Ben, take it away.
Hey, yeah, so I'm a third-year student at Candler, MDiv, and I love Candler a lot. I'm super thankful for also the diversity. One of the things I really like at Candler is I think there's a massive vocational diversity. You know, not everyone's being a pastor, not everyone's going to get their doctorate. There's people going for nonprofits all across the board, something I've really appreciated. It's been really formative for me. There's a lot of master's programs as well. We have everything from an MDiv to master's in religious leadership to master's in theological studies. I think we also, we provide, you know, at least 50% scholarships for all incoming MTS and MDiv students. And then one of the things I really appreciated at Candler as well is textual education program, where first year you are working at a non-ministry site, and the second year you are at a specific church. And so that also, in my previous background as an engineer before coming to Candler, I have realized the disconnection between academia and the real world profession. And so I've really appreciated that kind of real world application that Candler builds into their program. Yeah, I think some of the high points of Candler, Atlanta is an incredible city that both has the big city vibe, but then also maybe like in a small town with all of the civil rights movement that's true to its history. Yeah, that's a little bit about Candler.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. Okay, well, Aaron from Union Presbyterian Seminary, would you mind giving us an introduction to your school?
Sure. I'm Erin Burt. I'm the Director of Admissions at Union Presbyterian Seminary, and that's kind of a fun segue for me because I am from Atlanta, but I relocated to Richmond to attend seminary.
Small world.
Small world indeed. So we have two campuses. Richmond is our full-time residential campus. Charlotte is our part-time commuter campus. So their classes are mostly on the weekends. While we're affiliated with the Presbyterian Church, that is no means a restriction to attending our seminary. We have a vast array of different denominations represented at the school and have done some things to change our curriculum to be more invitational to students from different denominations. So we have 3 basic degrees that students who were graduating with an undergraduate would be interested in. That would be our MDiv, our MACE degree, which is a Master's in Christian Education. And then additionally, this upcoming fall, we'll be bringing in a new degree program called a Master's of Arts in Public Theology. So students who are interested in engaging issues around public policy, ecological concerns, economic justice, gender issues, the list could go on and on, could go for that specific degree program, or any of those 3 basic degree programs can be combined as a dual degree. So that's the academic side, but I also want to emphasize that Union's a pretty small community. So we really strive to build relationships between our students, between our professors. Our faculty and staff are very engaged with our students, and also helping them to find mentors in the local community. And that, for me, was a huge part of why I attended Union and why I love working for Union now. I want to echo what others have said, that we really want to be conversation partners with you all in the midst of your discernment. Our goal is for you to find the right seminary. So even if that's not us, we still want to be in conversation with students who are exploring their sense of vocation and potentially a sense of call.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. And last but certainly not least is Race Lamb over at Wake Forest School of Theology.
Hi, everyone. My name is Race Lamb, and I serve as the Director of Ministry and Vocational Exploration at Wake Forest University School of Divinity, which ultimately means I have one of those jobs where I do about 5 or 6 different things, right? But one of those responsibilities is that I am typically the one traveling and sitting with prospective students and asking them the hard questions about their call and next steps in their journey. So if any of you need someone just to chat with, I am more than happy to do that. A little bit about Wake Forest School of Divinity. I actually think out of everyone here, we may be the newest seminary kind of on the national landscape. We were not founded until 1999, and ultimately our founding faculty had some tough relationships with the Southern Baptist Convention and decided to part ways, and Wake Forest University, who had already kind of started the conversation around what it would look like to bring a seminary back on campus as a professional school, kind of welcome them with open arms. And then suddenly Wake Forest University School of Divinity was launched in 1999. As a result of that, however, I think that really kind of guides the culture of our program in our school. So one of my favorite statistics about Wake Div is only about 33% of our alumni are in what you would call traditional congregational ministry, meaning that close to 2/3 of our alumni are doing some other form of vocation, which I think is just really awesome. So that ranges from, you know, nonprofit ministry, chaplaincy, going on to get their PhD and doing higher education. We have folks who are working in kind of corporate America in Charlotte and running for office and up in DC. I mean, it's just like, kind of whatever you imagine vocation to be, there's likely that there's a Wake Div alumni who is already kind of in that field and can show you the way. Similar to all the other schools present, we also have a very diverse student body, which I think we're all very proud of. So that's something that you can kind of look forward to when you step onto Wake Forest's campus. We actually have 38 different faith affiliations represented in our student body population of about 100 students. So as you can imagine, when you are sitting in Christian ethics and talking about some of the hot button issues, and on one side of you is a Roman Catholic student and on the other side of you is a Black American Baptist student, the conversations can get really heated and deep, but really transformational at the same time. So we're really, really proud of kind of that aspect. The other unique thing about Wake Div is that we only offer one degree, and we do the Master of Divinity degree, and that is our bread and butter. Because we're part of Wake Forest University, you can do some joint degree offerings. So if you wanted to get your JD MDiv, if you wanted to get another master in counseling or sustainability or something like that, we do have several joint degree options available for you. But within that Master of Divinity program, we also have several concentrations, including concentrations in food, health, and ecology, sustainability, education, women and gender studies, as well as our most recent launch, which is interfaith studies. So if you are interested in any of those, we can help accommodate you in that way as well. So that's kind of the gist of it, but I'm happy to have a more in-depth conversation with anyone who is interested.
Thanks, Race. I appreciate that. All right, so I think that is everyone. Correct me if I missed anyone. But that's a great introduction to you all, y'all's and we'll use the vernacular, y'all's seminaries and divinity schools and schools of theology. So I appreciate all of that. So now we're going to shift for the next about 20 minutes or so, because our next session starts in about 22 minutes. But we want to shift our focus over to talking about vocation. And so a lot of students, undergrad students, come to college either being told that they need to major in one thing or another to go into a career in one thing or the other. And so they just do that, or they have an idea of what they want to do based on money. And so I want to open up the conversation by talking about someone we all, as seminary reps and people who are in theological education realms, know Frederick Buechner. He is widely known for his definition of vocation as being, quote, "Vocation is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need." So I wonder, and I'm just going to open the floor up to conversation. I don't think everyone needs to answer, just for time's sake, but I wonder what your answers might be if you can elaborate on what Frederick Buechner is saying here regarding vocation. I can pull Elisa Walkman and just call on people.
I'm happy to talk a little bit about it. I remember hearing this quote in a sermon when I had to have been like 15 years old, and just being totally struck by it and writing it down on one of those little slips where you write down your commitment for how much money you'll give to the church, right? And I took it home with me and kept it. And I think one of the things that's striking is the word gladness, and the fact that the gladness of it kind of hits at that core. It's that heart button that you can't really describe, and it's really true to who we are. And so with that, I just want to affirm that vocation and call, they're a really similar conversation, but everyone is called to a vocation, and that there is no limit to what that can look like at any point in one's life. The decision you make today about what your vocation is will evolve. And so with that, I think the world's needs, we all need one another, right? Like that's where that lies. And that can look so many ways. And for people attending seminary, part of what you'd be doing is exploring what your vocation will look like and what the world's needs are. And that is a conversation that will continue to adapt. You're not supposed to have it figured out before you show up at seminary.
And we got a lot of affirmatives with that. I see a lot of head nods. So I agree. Does anybody else want to? Yeah, Amber.
Well, I was just going to say, like, growing up, my dad always said, if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. Sounds pretty ideal, but I mean, it doesn't mean that even when you find what makes you glad, I mean, I think Aaron's focus on gladness is a key part to that quote. I think that's the key to this in general. It doesn't mean that things are going to be easier or whatever. And the vocation, once you figure out what it is that you feel called to, what it means is that, you know, you've discovered your purpose. And what the quote to add another really great quote about purpose, Howard Thurman said, like, don't ask yourself what the world needs, ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So I feel like what gives you life, and that is what true gladness is. You have moments of joy here and there, but I think with a lot of self-exploration, with a great community of people who are affirming you in your walk, and some experiences can really help you figure out what is that gladness for you, and help you figure out what that vocation might look like.
Yeah. And I would say too, it's not always your actual career, you know, your 9 to 5, what makes the paycheck. You know, I think a lot of times it is maybe a calling that you find in your life outside of that, you know, 40-hour work week, or outside of when you work. And so I think all of us would say, you know, we have these degrees that are offered, but it's not just about like, I need to go get this degree so I can get this job at this place, like it might be in other fields. I think in divinity and in schools of theology, a lot of times students come knowing that they have some kind of interest in some kind of ministry somehow, right? And might not know exactly where that's going to land them. But that vocation really is something about your full life experience and where you find calling overall, maybe not, where you earn your paycheck. And that's why you have so many ministers or people that, are bivocational or might, find a lot of passion in a field that has nothing to do with divinity, and then might be very involved in their church or very involved in something outside the church if they're maybe, not in a church. And so I think that's another thing that is important to remember with vocation, is that it's not always just about where you go to work and you earn your paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I was going to add, affirm what my colleague said. I think that's right. To add, I guess, a third quote now, the Beatles, right? And their lyric, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I've seen it time and again. Folks enter seminary, you can have multiple vocations, right, and passions, but sometimes folks don't discover that until they're in that seminary journey. And that's like totally okay and like not weird at all, right? The bivocational piece is really right. A lot of our students do that, right? They'll pastor and, some of them have become New York Times bestselling authors, like Nadia Boltz-Weber. So like, sometimes you just don't know until you know, and it might just take that one class, that one student colleague, that one faculty or staff member, and you're like, oh, my heart was on fire for this, but now this is also really cool to me. I wonder if I can make a vocation that combines these things together. Thanks.
So I've heard, Megan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that quote really hits home for me personally, but at the same time, I'm coming back to Parker Palmer's words about vocation, talking about this being the thing that I can't not do for reasons I'm unable to explain to anybody else, but that are nonetheless compelling. And I know when I was at Mars Hill, I so wanted to make sense of it, this compelling calling, and I couldn't make sense of it, and I still can't sometimes. And seminary is a good place to try to make sense of it and to wrestle with your calling and to explore it and to just be amazed at the compelling nature of it, even when you don't understand it. And so I think I just want to say, like, it's okay to not know and to not understand what it all means, because some of us on the other side of seminary still don't always know what it all means, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Yes, let your life speak. This is a call out for Parker Palmer. If you are interested and you're watching this, this is a great book about vocation. I'm sure Race could give you a lot more. I've already asked Race for some recommendations on vocation, so reach out to Race if you have any questions about vocation or good books on vocation. He also sent me a YouTube link to watch a Howard Thurman talk, and so again, great resource right there. So I heard a lot of interchangeable terminology between vocation and calling. So I wonder if those two things are the same thing, because I know being in spiritual and religious life, we talk a lot about receiving a calling from God to either go into ministry or to go into a certain field. And so I wonder if you all might have a few words to say about calling. If you receive a calling, does that mean you have to go receive a ministry degree? What does that mean?
I could speak to that a little bit. It does get interchanged a lot, and I think for many of us who this is our job and we talk about these things, we use them a lot. We use them a lot of different ways too. But I feel like from the Christian standpoint, from our faith, like everyone is called. You're called to faith. You're called to use your gifts and skills. You're called to be the presence of Christ in the world and meet the needs of others. Everyone is called in that way, and I think being called to serve the church or in ministry, in a ministry setting is a form of that calling. But there's countless other ways that you can be called, and they can manifest themselves in a vocation, specific vocation. My husband is a pharmacist. He feels like that is his calling. That is the way that he ministers to people. And he is oftentimes the first person that his patients come to after their spouse has passed away. They need to cancel their prescriptions or something. He can be there for them in that moment. That is ministry. That is being the presence of Christ, and that is meeting people's needs in that way. And that's his calling. That's also his vocation. And then, you know, you can have a calling, specific calling to ministry. And I think it's, that's part of your experience, and the work that you do individually and in a community is kind of figuring out where your calling is leading. And is that more of a traditional vocational ministry, or maybe in a different vocation, or a combination of the two? So that was my contribution to that part. Hopefully, I don't know if that clarifies it or just emphasizes the fact that we can use them all together.
Thanks, Amber. Hi, Megan.
Yeah, similar to Amber, I'll just say, I also think, you know, vocation is kind of that way. How do you understand the call that you've received from God? You know, I think as Christians, we are called to be followers of Christ. And so in order to understand that, it's like, what kind of career or what kind of like job occupation might that be? I will say, being in school, being in seminary right now, it is so easy to get caught up in what's my vocation going to be. In some ways, the diverse vocation at Candler kind of is somewhat hard, because I constantly feel like I'm comparing to other people. You know, what's your vocation? What's your vocation? And it's been really helpful. I'm taking a vocational discernment class right now, and it's been really helpful to also discern, like, what's my center is what we kind of talk about, is what's the thing that actually like deep down motivates me. And in some ways I've been able to kind of discern, you know, some of my center I think has been ego, has been pride. It's been things that I don't think is good to center your call or your vocation on. And so I think it's really important to kind of, I think we all have the call, but sometimes in the vocation we can get so lost in the particularities and how it forms into a career that it can kind of trip us up sometimes. So I just wanted to name that as someone who's literally in my third year right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ben. That was very enlightening for sure. All right, does anybody else want to add to that? Okay, so what does it mean to explore vocation? If we feel a calling, or we feel led to go into a particular degree field, or to seek out a job in a certain career field, what does it mean to explore that vocation? Right, so I'm gonna have to call on you.
Yeah, I'll launch on this one. So, I mean, just from a very practical standpoint, when you go to seminary, when you go to a divinity school, you're stepping into a professional school setting, and just the very act of attending Old Testament interpretation on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m., you are exploring your vocation in that kind of very basic setting. The other aspect, which I don't really think any of us hit on earlier, is part of all of our programs, you're going to be required to do internships. And that is very intentional, right? Like, the last thing we want you to do is think that you are being called to be a pastor or to be the director of a nonprofit and graduate you without you ever getting the practical experience of what it's like to do congregational ministry, or to lead a fundraiser for a nonprofit, or et cetera, right? So from a very practical standpoint, like, going to seminary, going to divinity school will naturally allow you the space and the opportunity to explore your different vocations. I remember being told by kind of my predecessor in this position when I was applying to Wake Div, that I needed to remember that vocation ultimately is the combination of, you know, what does the world need? What do you love doing? What are you good at? And then what will the world actually pay you for? And only if all four of those are reached does that actually contribute to kind of the term vocation. So as like my colleague said earlier, you can have many callings, and all of your callings may not end up being a vocation or a type of service or job that you are ultimately paid for. And a lot of us are lucky. Hopefully we're doing our vocation and we're getting paid to do our vocation. And that is ultimately the end goal, right? But it's like having all of those elements kind of come together. And I think just by taking the time to reflect, taking the time to be in conversation with others, you slowly start to, you get to explore. Like, you know, like I love drag, like I love drag, right? But like, I know I would be awful doing drag. So therefore, maybe I am not called to do drag, right? You know, things like that. And it's only through exploration that, that like slowly you can start processing the different elements of your identity and your calling and truly find that kind of, that center that Ben talked about where all of those four things come together. And you can thrive, but also the people that you help can thrive as well as a result of your calling.
Perfect. Yeah, Aaron.
I'll kind of jump in here. I think in that vein, as Race was saying, there's so many different ways to look at it, but I think we also have a lot of beautiful biblical narrative about this search and this exploration. And I'll say that I personally connect with Ecclesiastes, which may seem a little bit unusual, but for me, that's part of what Kohelet is doing, is kind of on this journey and this wrestling with sense of call and vocation and the chase for wisdom. And I'll also say that I think one of the interesting things about vocation is as we're exploring our sense of it and our sense of call, there's not always one clear answer. We don't always get this like thing dropped in our lap that's like, here you go, here's what you're supposed to go do. And sometimes there are choices. So if you're at that point where you're like, I don't know what to do next, and I have options and there's not one clear thing, just know that that doesn't mean that you're lost or that your vocation, that you're off course or that you're not called. Sometimes there are just a lot of options and not only one.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up Ecclesiastes because Race's sermon is on Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes. There's a time for this and a time for that. And yeah, the wisdom literature is great to go back and read through, especially at a time like this. So,
you know, Ecclesiastes is what got me through this past summer. I needed the vanity of vanities. You know, I needed to lament, but then I also needed to remember, God really just wants us to eat, drink, and be happy in our work. So, you know, get up and go to the office and you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Okay, and I want to end with one more question just for the sake of time. And I know a lot of students have this question, but they want to know, like, well, how do I know when I found my vocation? And so I just want to know if there is a time when you know that you found your vocation. I would kind of like danced around this a little bit with the question or the answers that you all have given. But I just want to know maybe like a yes and no. Like, is there a time? How do you know when you actually have found your vocation?
So yeah, it's really specific. There's an itch you get right in the back. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a different issue. You might need to go see a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of possible answers to this, right? But what I have seen and experienced in my own life too is that it goes back to the original quote, right, from Frederick, that your deep gladness is meeting this need of the world. But I think it's really important to listen to what other people are saying in a community, right, about your gifts and skills. So having your idea of vocation, right, trying it out, exploring it, all the things we've talked about, but then having that confirmed by people you admire and respect is really important. But it's a balancing act, right? Because sometimes people will tell you what your vocation is too, and they're not right. And it's for their idea for you. So like you want to I think, be very spiritually centered. I think vocation, Parker Palmer talks about this, it's more about listening than willfulness. He says something like that. Yes. But you also want to listen to good friends, not like the friends that Job had. You want to listen to good, trusted friends. sort of as like a counterweight to any internal willfulness, right? And I think if you listen to God, listen to friends and spiritual leaders that you admire, that gets you closer to it, and then I think when it happens.
I think I would also add that even when you maybe recognize that and recognize it kind of sneaks up on you that like, okay, maybe this is it, that maybe you don't recognize it at first, and then you get to a point where you're like, because I mean, I was a religion major in undergrad at Georgetown College. I didn't go to seminary, and then here I am recruiting for a seminary, and it kind of just happened. And then I looked back and thought, well, what was that? And it kind of just got me to this place where I was kind of like, well, here I am, and this feels like that. But I think there are days in any person's vocation, any person's calling, job, whatever you want to call it, where you think, is this really what it is? But I think you can kind of come back to that deep sense, recognizing that there are seasons of life where it might not feel, hunky-dory for a while, but then, you kind of still have that sense of peace even on the hard days. My husband's a minister, and he's a youth minister in a Baptist church. And he said, being a youth minister right now in a pandemic kind of sucks. And it's hard to say that out loud, and it's hard to recognize that, and it's hard to say that and not feel guilty or not feel like, well, what am I saying? Because God's called me to this. And he was like, I'm still called to this. Let me be clear. Like, I'm still called to be here, but it's not fun right now because I can't be around students. I can't be talking to them in person. I can't go to their school. I can't do any of this. But he said, but I still know, and I still recognize that calling deep down inside me, even on days where I'm like, good grief, this is this is real hard to do right now. And I think a lot of us are feeling that right now, especially, in the middle of a pandemic. But I think even in those hard seasons, it's something we can always kind of fall back on, that deep sense of peace.
Yeah. Abby, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. Like, all of us in our own professions absolutely have good and bad days, but that does not mean that we aren't still called to do the good work that we're in. So I really appreciate you saying that. That's very important to acknowledge that. So, well, does anybody have any closing remarks they'd like to add to vocation calling, vocational exploration? Awesome. So I just want to say a special thank you to all of our seminary reps who are still here and those who have had to go for other meetings. You all have been great, and really appreciate it. So Mars Hill students, if you're watching this video, just know that these folks have email addresses, they have phone numbers, you can look them up on their individual websites, and you can also find their information, their contact information in daily announcements. And so just be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you all seminary representatives for being here today for Seminary Day. We thank you.